Hello everyone and welcome to another edition of our agriculture show called Ag Life. I am Gerard Lampow. We're going to have a conversation about the glyphosate debate, so look out for that one. As well, we're going to have a look at some of our agriculture related stories over the last little while. We really want you to keep on sending in your various community events, ag-related content and such. So here's a look at what's on the agriculture events menu. Let's have a look at it. So once again, please do keep on sending in those events, especially ag-related events throughout our various communities, and we'll share them with you. The third Canadian Beef Industry Conference, well, it's in the books and industry stakeholders are assessing the outcomes. Let's find out how the industry is gearing up to deal with consumer perceptions.
Was a great meeting of the minds. Our goal of the conference was to be the national meeting place for the Canadian beef industry, and I think we accomplished that.
Veterinarian Tammy Ryby chaired the proceedings this August in London, Ontario. There was an emphasis on working together, especially to deal with a changing marketplace and consumer perceptions.
How good, nutritionally good the beef product is, how sustainable it is for the environment, and how tasty.
One perception Ryby addressed was the issue of greenhouse gas emissions, especially methane. That's down 15% as of 2015.
The beef industry uses very little in products to produce the beef. They're using less and less all the time. We're becoming way more efficient.
Ryan Casco, who runs a feedlot in Lethbridge, gives a Western Canada perspective.
We did a farm tour of a couple feedlots in the London area, as well as some cow-calf operations, and it's just a very different climate that they deal with, a different way of feeding cattle.
The conference will return to Calgary in 2019.
I think our goal would be to make sure that we bring in some engaging speakers, mix and mingle, and learn and grow and all that.
And still to come, we meet a producer who is championing soybeans. Ag Life continues after this break. Do stay with us.
This segment of Ag Life is brought to you by Webb's Machinery. Webb's Machinery, your New Holland dealer in Vermilion, Vegreville, and Lamont.
Welcome back to the show. Of course, still to come on our show, we've got a conversation about the glyphosate debate. Let's chat now about soybeans. Well, soybeans produce a good vegetable oil, and the byproduct soy meal is high in protein and fiber, making it perfect for livestock. Laurie Wakefield has had soybeans in his rotation for several years.
The crop is a crop that grows very well in much warmer climates than here. South America. We're trying to adapt a crop that does well in Mississippi to 275 miles north of the U.S. border. Mother Nature has different idea of what growing conditions should be here than it is there. So it's a learning thing, and there's a lot of the research that's available doesn't apply directly to areas like northwestern Saskatchewan or northeastern Alberta. This is a plant that was just pulled from the field behind us here. On the roots you have nodules that form from an interaction between a rhizobia strain of bacteria that help the plant to convert nitrogen. And then as we move up, you can see that where my hand is about where the ground level was. And what I was saying about the having to be able to harvest very low, you can see that the pods are only 2 or 3 inches above that.
Yeah, very close to the ground.
And there are a significant number of pods right at that point. Typically a soybean would have 3 beans in a pod, but sometimes there'll be 2, and on occasion you'll get 4. Some varieties tend to make more of the 4s. But of course, because the plant is maturing from the bottom up and producing the pods from the bottom up, the best beans will be in those early pods. And I don't know if, Gerard, can you feel the
Yep.
bean has formed in there?
It seemed like they formed pretty well, as far as I can tell there.
So those ones will be getting quite full and firm. As you move up the plant, they'll be not as well formed yet. They're still filling. And when you get up near the top, there is beans developed in there, and if the frost holds off long enough, those will still make beans that'll be marketable. For production, they're a relatively easy crop to determine potential yield. You can, if you know what your plant population is on average throughout the field, you can count the pods on a plant and then multiply by, for example, say 2 per pod. And it's just a formula. You can go through the math and figure out roughly how much
you're going to get there. So when did you say you think you might be able to harvest, because you're waiting for the leaves and so on to fall off and just leave the beans on there?
A plant that's at this maturity, I would fully expect this is going to be almost another month yet before it's fully mature. And this is from a relatively early maturing variety that we've tried this year. We have some of our other ones are a much later variety, and they're going to be we're going to need Mother Nature to hold off on the big killing frost until the middle of September for sure, maybe even close to the end of September.
That pretty much sounds like it. Well, we've been chatting with Laurie Wakefield about soybeans, and we'll keep our fingers crossed to see just how this all comes together. Ag Life continues after this break. Welcome back, everyone. You're really going to want to pay attention to this next conversation. This hangs on everything here. A recent court judgment in California is having rippling effects across the ag world. Now, a gardener by the name of Dwayne Johnson, not the superstar Hollywood actor, well, he won a legal suit for some $289 million in damages. He has terminal cancer, and his claim that spraying glyphosate, which goes by the popular name of Roundup, led to his illness, that won over the jury. And this is of concern to the ag industry, which uses glyphosate. I'm quoting now from Dr. Joe Schwartz at McGill University, and he writes, regulatory agencies such as the U.S., the EPA, the European Food Safety Association, as well as Canada's pesticide regulatory agency focus on risk, not hazard, and they've all concluded that glyphosate does not pose a cancer risk to humans. Well, agronomist Clint Jurke with the Canola Council of Canada weighs in on the science involved.
The science is fairly clear that glyphosate is a very low-risk herbicide. In fact, that's been one of the benefits of using it. It has become the most popular herbicide used across the world. Like there's second place is not even close to it. Like it's a very effective tool at controlling weeds. And if we don't control weeds successfully, then we can't really grow crops, and it becomes very difficult to feed the world if we're competing with weeds. So That being said, glyphosate has been one of the most effective herbicides ever used, and the nice thing is that it has had a very low safety concern and a low environmental cost. Like when it contacts soil, it essentially becomes inactive very quickly, and so it doesn't have any carryover types of effects. So it's had a lot of really good benefits, and regulatory agencies around the world and the scientific community has been very solidly behind the fact that this is a very low-risk herbicide. And so what's troubling is that a court with a jury feels otherwise, that they can determine what is a safe and what is an effective product better than the science and the research community can. And so, yeah, it's tough, like when the court of public opinion becomes more valuable than what the actual scientific community has to put forward I don't think is a very good precedent to move along.
Yeah, we're on a difficult point right now, almost like a slippery slope, because a lot of these conversations are happening on social media, and the farmers are sort of caught in the middle on the defensive, and now this is a product that's been in use for quite some time and beneficial towards producing food in the quantities that are necessary to feed the world. And they're saying now that this judgment has come out, already talking about the banning of Roundup and glyphosate. Where are we at the moment in that conversation here in Canada?
Yeah, I don't hear of a call for banning this herbicide at all. Certainly that hasn't been discussed with the regulatory agencies that I'm aware of, but that's kind of outside of my job description, so I'm not always involved with that. But the public perhaps doesn't really appreciate the number of benefits that glyphosate has had for particularly us in Western Canada and in Canada as a whole, is that because of this herbicide, we've been able to essentially eliminate most tillage in our farming practices. We don't need to cultivate the soils. We don't need to summer fallow anymore like we had in the past. And as a result, our soil doesn't blow. Our soil doesn't move from field to field in the way that it had in the past. In years of drought, in fact, like we just came out of a very serious drought, maybe not right here in the Midwest, but for most of the prairies last year was an exceedingly dry year. And we didn't have any issues with soil blowing in the way that it had. Like, it was drier last year in much of the prairies than it was in the 1930s during the Dust Bowl, when we lost about 40 to 50% of our topsoil in those years.
Yeah, some of the older folks would certainly remember that. For youngsters like ourselves, it's the pictures, maybe some video, but more, for me at least, we're reading about it. But that intimate knowledge, we don't understand that when you say we don't have to do tillage, like our grandparents would probably talk about just how strenuous all of that was. We've sort of lost that knowledge of just what was required then. When you say glyphosate is now beneficial for all of those reasons, but the only thing that we're dealing with right now is what presents itself, this court case matter.
Yeah. Well, we certainly don't want to ever have to return to those situations. Like, if we start losing our agronomic tools in which to grow the food to feed the world, then once we lose those tools, then we have to go back to older, more environmentally damaging ways of farming. Like, if we ever had to go back to plowing fields and that, it's like, our soils are only 10,000 years old. Like, when the last glaciers left this area of Canada, our soils began to form in that period of time. And since we started cultivating this soil, only in the last 100 years, we lost half of our topsoil, mainly in the beginning of the 1900s. So if we had to go back to that way of farming, it would not be sustainable here any longer. So yeah, it's important that we maintain the tools that we have.
Indeed. And as you're talking about losing tools, I'm going to read just off of this here. The Pest Management Regulatory Agency is now releasing a proposal decision to phase out some outdoor products or chemicals that are used. These two products are important for canola growers in the prevention of damage that are caused by flea beetles. I've been trying to say the name for some time. I'm going to take one stab at it and then you can correct me. Thiamethoxam?
Thiamethoxam.
Okay. Yeah. Thiamethoxam, excuse me. And clothianidin?
Clothianidin, yeah.
Clothianidin. See, it's terrible. I can't say them. So two products that the Pest Management Regulatory Agency are proposing a ban on. And of course, this again will come into that point you're just making there about losing the tools that we need in our agronomy to grow the crops that feed the world.
Yes. Yeah, and so this is a proposal by the Pest Management Regulatory Agency through Health Canada that they're looking at phasing out these two neonicotinoid products. They are insecticides. They kill flea beetles, but they are seed treatments that we use. In canola, almost every canola acre has the seed treated with either one of these two products. And it's essential for us because flea beetles will very easily decimate a crop. And so what the PMRA is suggesting within a period of 3 to 5 years to phase out the outdoor use of these two products. And yeah, there's a 90-day period in which they are looking for public consultation and industry feedback and that. And so we're in the process right now at the Canola Council of looking at what their proposal is and looking into the science in which that they're basing this proposal upon. So, but we do have some pretty big concerns about it. Just the fact that our canola crop is very reliant on these two products.
Yeah, certainly the economic concern, one, you're going to be looking at the science of it, two. Is there any negotiation room in terms of, okay, yes, this is a proposal, but can the proposal be walked back? Is there any consideration for that? Yeah,
well, like the PMRA has done a very good job in the past at basing their decisions on a science-based process, and we certainly want to encourage that, because any slippage in making decisions that are not based upon science certainly holds a lot of danger for the canola industry and the wider agricultural community at large. Farming is a science-based industry. Like everything that we do is the result of good quality science. And so once we start walking away from the science and making decisions that are not science-based, that does have some big concerns for us. And so, like I said, we're just in the process of kind of digging into what evidence that they have that are the basis for this decision. But it's the neonics as a class of insecticides have been in the news a lot in the last couple of years, mainly for concerns about potential effects on pollinators like bees and honeybees. But it should be clear, though, that this decision, this proposed decision, is not based upon pollinators. It's based upon potential impacts upon aquatic insects, the little insects that swim in ponds and sloughs and in streams and that. They've already concluded, the PMRA has concluded that our use of the neonics don't have any impact on pollinators. So this is not a decision about bees and other pollinators, which is good. But it's the aquatic insects where they have some concerns. So this is where we really need to look into the science a lot more.
All right. What would be the alternative if you don't have these two products?
Yeah, if we don't have these two, then we would have to go back to some previous forms of flea beetle control. And most of that is foliar applications of insecticides. And that might not seem to be a bad thing just intuitively, but when you spray an insecticide over a crop, then you have a much bigger impact upon non-targeted insects. So if I'm trying to spray flea beetles, I might actually be killing some other beneficial insects in that application. And so it has a bigger environmental cost to go back to these older foliar applications. So the nice thing about these neonic seed treatments is that they stay on the seed and they stay on the young seedling plant, so that when flea beetles eat that plant, then they get sick and then they die. It doesn't affect very many other non-target insects that are in the canola crop. But the concern is whether or not some of this seed treatment might actually be making its way into bodies of water, and so that's where we need to actually get a better understanding.
Agronomist Clint Jurke there. Well, when we come back on Ag Life, we have a conversation about keeping youngsters safe on all-terrain vehicles. Do stay with us. Welcome back. Another aspect of being safe on the farm is having a conversation with youngsters about the proper use of all-terrain vehicles. Well, let's meet an expert who is volunteering his time with kids. The proper use of all-terrain vehicles was in focus as grade 4 kids were on board for Farm Safety Day at the Lloyd X. Gordon Hart says the size of the ATV must be appropriate for kids.
Some of the things they should be checking prior to riding, how to check the machine over, wearing the proper equipment and everything, some gloves, eye protection, proper helmets, make sure they're fitting properly, make sure they ask for permission before riding the ATVs, and also to tell somebody where they're going when they're going out, and to always ride with a partner.
Hart urges parents to check with manufacturers for recommended ages, as matching the power of a vehicle with experience is another factor. Alberta Health Services advises that no one under the age of 16 should ride an ATV. They point out that children under 16 make up 20% of ATV-related fatalities since 2010. Added to the AHS position of no under 16 ATV operators are passenger and alcohol restrictions, as well as licensing, registration, and training. The AHS recognizes that ATVs are used for transportation and ag-related activities. Hart wants kids to be safe.
For most of the kids here, they're riding under 90cc bikes and everything. We're trying to educate them not to be riding the adult machines, which require you to be 16 years of age and older to be operating, due to the weight and size of the machines versus their weight and size, that they can't properly control the machines when they're out riding.
Kids being kids are trying out the big ATVs, and some have been riding without permission. Hart has shown his own kids why it's not safe.
My youngest one, when she was 16, I took her out and showed her that even though she's 16, the proper age for riding the machine, she can't handle the machine on her own.
These grade 4 kids got a new understanding of ATV use.
I learned about the brakes and that it's important that you know that you can be strong enough to drive a big one.
You have to, when you get off, you have to put the brakes back before, just in case if the AT moves.
Well, that's a wrap on Ag Life. If you've got a comment or story idea, we'd love to hear from you. You can email us at tvnews@newcap.ca. Thanks for sharing the time with us, and enjoy your evening.